Is everyone being safe out there? That's what I want to know. Is everyone being safe? Later with Mo Kelly. KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere in the iHeartRadio app. We asked for the rains. They are here and some. We asked for the rains and we said prepare for the mudslides. They're here and some. We asked for the rain, but we said get ready. There might be flash flooding. And guess what? We have plenty of flash flooding. I'm watching NBC4 and they're showing this video over and over again of an SUV being washed out into the ocean by fast moving mudslides. It is dangerous out there. I encourage you to slow down. And we always talk about personal self-defense and remaining safe. For today, especially, just take the long way home. It's okay to go a little bit slower. Go somewhere a little bit safer and make sure you arrive at your destination safely. As a matter of fact, I try to practice what I preach. I took surface streets in. I had to be in at 4:00 for a meeting, which meant I left my house around a little bit after 2. So I'm going to say maybe 2:15 or so. And I decided to just get on Western Avenue and just drive north until I got to the 101 and could loop around to Barham Boulevard. And then I was in Burbank. And it took me close to 2 hours. But you know what? It wasn't as stressful. It wasn't as dangerous. And yes, people were a little bit impatient. But ultimately, I got to my destination safely. And I did not, and I can't speak for what it looks like right now because I've been inside for the past 4 hours or so, 3 hours. But there wasn't as much flooding and something that you have to be mindful of, especially if you're on the freeways. If you're on the freeways right now, slow down because of this downpour, this torrential downpour, there may be flooding and puddling that you may not readily see as you would during the daytime. It only takes a momentary loss of traction and all of a sudden you're hydroplaning. I can't speak for Mark Ronner or Stefan, but I know I've been in a car which is hydroplaned, and it's a scary thing. It's a very dangerous thing. And I don't know. This is actually what I wanted to bring into the conversation for. Good evening, Mark. Good evening, Stefan.
Hello, Mo.
I have certain rules when I drive in rains like these. If possible, I try to avoid the freeways just because chain reaction accidents happen all the time. But I also never drive in the lane closest to the center divider. Never, because depending on the freeway, you'll have puddling there. And if you do even momentarily lose traction and start to hydroplane, you'll probably end up in the center median. That's me. Do you have any rules that you follow?
I don't know about rules. I mean, slower and keep more distance between me and the car in front of me, which not everybody follows that rule, by the way. People were still zipping in and out, like it was a video racing game. Really some A+ displays of driving skill today, and possibly a few trips to the ER later. Here, let's do this like an old Johnny Carson bit. Are you ready?
Is this the Great Cardette?
No. It was the drive in here was so scary today.
How scary was it?
Well, I'll tell you. It was so scary that I was afraid to take one of my hands off the wheel to give anybody the finger.
You know, you have these little markers of growth. And for me, my marker of growth was 4 or 5 people honked at me because I was being overly cautious. They couldn't see what I saw in front of me. So they were really impatient. They were like, bah, 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 and they would go, nah. They wanted to zoom around me to let me know how angry they were at me. And you know what? I didn't stare them down. I didn't give them a runner. I didn't do anything.
We're not calling it that.
No, I'm calling it. I get your point. We don't have to, but I am. Okay.
I reject this. I resist it, and I'm filing an HR complaint. But
I almost gave a couple runners.
I mean, it is a runner.
Now. Excuse me. It's the Gulf of America, and it's a runner.
Pretty much.
That's the way it is. It has been so declared.
That's a big negatory.
But my point is, I take it for me. I can only speak for me as a measurement of personal growth because I did not engage. I did not reciprocate. I understood that if anything, I was driving for more than one person. I was driving for me and that person. I could see a hazard that the person behind me just couldn't see. There was a bus getting ready to pull out in front of me, and so I had to slow down quickly. Why? Bus. But the person behind me took exception to that. That was my drive-in. It took a lot longer, but it was a lot safer, and it's a lot less stressful because of that. I didn't have to worry about hydroplaning or anything. Twala, what was your drive-in like?
Leaving the valley, especially in the Chatsworth area, because it was a torrential downpour for most of the afternoon, and it got worse as the day started coming to an end, at least the first half. And when I headed out onto Topanga, making my way to the freeway, right around where Topanga and Devonshire kind of meet, all of a sudden you could just see the streets just the flooding. I came up to about, can't remember which street exactly, but it was right where the bee farm is. Right where the bee farm is.
That I will never go to.
That you'll never go to.
Right.
Cars were literally getting stuck in what I could see from my monster truck. I could see that the water was coming up to the runner there. So it's at least a foot of water that cars were trying to make, and they were just hazards on. They tried to make it through. They couldn't. No hydroplaning when you are in a tank. I will say thank you to the tank.
This is one time I do appreciate having an SUV, if only because that higher center of gravity, when you're dealing with potential flooding and puddling, that's what I want. I'm not trying to go 70 miles an hour around the corner, so I don't need all that speed and handling. I just like to have a higher center of gravity so I don't stall out in a puddle.
Now, does your vehicle come with all of the added terrain options?
Absolutely.
Because I put mine in slippery when wet mode.
That's right. Yeah. Yes.
I felt good. I felt it. I felt it grip the street.
This is the first car I've had, which I've had those types of options where any other time I'm relying on my superior driving skills and handling to maneuver and navigate through this treacherous terrain. But now I can just go boop, and it's all done just like that. So if we can say anything to you, just slow down. Honestly, there's no need to plow through that puddle. There's no need to go 75 miles an hour on the freeway, whichever freeway you're on. And it may look like there are no other cars out there. It may look like that it's maybe not raining as hard as it was an hour ago, but there are many reports of flash flooding. We will have that for you throughout the evening. Be clear on that. There are, depending on where you are, especially if you're in the Malibu area on PCH, they might have even shut it down at this point. We'll try to get the specific information. But there have been a number of reports of mudslides. We told you about the car, which was the SUV, which was swept out into the Pacific Ocean because of fast moving mudslides. And the moral of the story is it's very dangerous out there. It may not seem like it. And if you're new to California, you may think, oh, it's just rained. Or even the folks who've been living here for 40 years, it seems like we have to retrain ourselves and teach ourselves every single year that when it rains, we have to slow down. So if anything, just slow down. If need be, take surface streets. If you're concerned about the freeway, I'm mature enough to admit, hey, I'd rather be on surface streets in weather like this. And even on surface streets, you still have to be careful about the puddling and the flash flooding. But we'll have this information for you all the rest of the evening. At the bottom of the hour at 7:30, we'll have Michael Monks, who's going to join us and talk about his weekend wildfire special, which is coming up. All these elements we're going to be covering. And the Twala has jokes. He says time is running out for me to repay my debt to Denny's because Denny's has announced the closure of some 70 to 90 restaurants. In other words, if I'm going to pay back the money I owe for dining and ditching, well, I better hurry up before
You're a news article now.
I am. We'll talk about that before the hour's up and so much more. It's later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
I'm going to tell you again, hey, just slow down. Just slow down. Wherever you're going, it's still going to be there when you get there. And whether you get there 10 minutes later, 20 minutes later, or even 45 minutes later, it's still going to be there. Now, that said, since we know that it's going to be raining, at least for the next day or so, we're going to have to plan ahead. You know that you're probably going to have to go to work tomorrow. So let's think about good practices as far as planning ahead. If you got to be at work at 9 a.m. tomorrow and you usually leave at 8:30, well, you might have to leave at 8 o'clock or 7:45. So you don't have to rush. You don't have to put yourself in more danger. You don't have to put those who are around you in danger. There's some other good thoughts and practices that you can use between now and the end of the weekend or whenever it should rain, because presumably it will rain again. Even if we get a drought in between, it's going to rain again. And I got this from LAist, and I didn't know some of these. I didn't think about some of these. So it's good for everyone to know. And if you haven't done it, it's not too late to do it. And if you're going to put your car out there, you might as well make sure that your car is ready and safe. Have you checked the treads on your tires? I had to get a screw removed from my tire 2 days ago. Now, how that's important is this. If I knew that my tire had a slow leak and it was getting low, and if you've ever driven a car with decreasing tire pressure, you do not have as much stability in your steering. It will pull to one side or the other depending on which side that slow leak is. And if your tires are imbalanced in terms of pressure, you make it more difficult to handle the car. And I have an SUV, so it's even more noticeable and could be more dangerous. So make sure that your treads are reasonable and the pressure is correct. And you should be doing this regularly regardless of the rain, but it's more important in times like these. And I didn't know this, but when I was reading this, it makes sense. Did you know that middays, when it's raining especially, is the most dangerous time? That's when you're going to encounter the most accidents and the most likelihood of you being in an accident. LAist reported back in 2019, researchers from USC Data Journalism Project Crosstown crunched traffic and weather data and found these patterns. On dry days, they found that crashes tend to peak during rush hour when they're the most fender benders. But on rainy days, the researchers discovered most crashes happen during the middle of the day when there's seemingly less traffic. Maybe that's because you see less traffic, you think you can drive normally, or may drive even excess of the speed limit, which dramatically increases the likelihood of a crash when you combine speed and weather conditions. With the rain, obviously, more collisions, more traffic, and more delays. As I said before, give yourself more time than usual when trying to go from A to B. And for the most part, it's easier now than it was 15 years ago. We have these apps like Google Maps and Waze and Apple Maps, where if you're stuck in traffic, there's a way to find out an alternative route, be it on streets or some other way. If there's a traffic, some sort of obstacle, there are ways that you can do it and you don't have to be dangerous about it, because it used to be you were just trying to figure it out on the fly. There was a flood in front of you. The street or freeway was closed down, and you're just trying to find your way on the surface streets, trying to find your way around, and it gets to be really hectic and dangerous, frankly. But we have technology. Make sure we are using it for our benefit. And here's something else. If you've driven as long as I have, and I've been driving 40 years, sorry to tell them my age, but I've been driving 40 years. It used to be we had cars in which the headlights did not automatically turn on, or you couldn't have a sensor where it would just come on if it was dark. And there would be a lot of fools out there who would not turn on their headlights when it was raining, in the middle of the day at least. Turn on your headlights, folks. Turn on your headlights. And I was just talking to Twala during the break. The light helps not only you see, but it helps people see you, especially if someone's coming in the other direction. And when you're driving right now, it's nighttime. You better have your lights on, but make sure, especially in this rain, and not your high beams, just your regular headlights, where people can see you and you can see them, and also hopefully see some of the puddles. But you gave a great bit of advice.
Last night when I left here, it was pouring. I left here right when it started coming down. And the entire time on the freeway, as long as I could, I actually rode behind a semi. I rode behind a tractor truck because I knew that anything that this truck was abiding by the rules of the road. It's not going to be speeding. Anything that happens in front of this truck, I will know it's happening before it comes to me. Not only that, my lights just generally bouncing off the back of the truck, it helped to illuminate the road, which I can see with my glasses on. I can see, fairly good at night, but still that helped me to stay in line, stay on the road, and actually drive slow. It forced me to have to drive slow because I'm not going to drive into the back of this truck. Like, you go around me if you want to. You may think I'm tripping, but I'm going to follow this truck as long as I can to get to my exit as almost a path layer in front of me. Like, I'm running interference. Yeah, you're running interference. You're gonna block any and everything. If there's a puddle, if there's anything, if there's an accident, I'm gonna see you react to it before I need to. And it's a lot harder to do that if you're following a car in front of you, which may be zipping and yeah. Couldn't stand the drivers last night.
No, and we're all dealing with it. Stefan is going to deal with it. Stefan, what time did you leave your house to get here today?
I usually leave like 10 before, like around 1:50.
Did you leave at the same time today?
Yeah.
Did you?
Well, actually, no, you're right. I left a quarter till today because I was worried, like you said, about the traffic.
Did you follow the same path that you usually do, route?
I did follow the same path because when I got to the spot where I normally get off, right by the Galen Center in USC, it was actually moving pretty smoothly because I think a lot of people did what you did and took the streets. So it might have opened up the freeway a little bit. But, yeah, there was, there's still bozos that drive like nothing. And when it's pouring down like this, it's just like, you don't know who you're going to run into or, well, motorcycles shouldn't be driving, but what if a motorcycle comes up and you don't see them? It's like, that's, yeah, not cool.
And the 110 freeway is notorious for flooding at certain points. I wonder what it's going to be like going home tonight.
That's what I was thinking too.
It's like, should I take the 110? And I'm specifically talking about the 110. That's the one that usually floods.
Because it under the underpass, it's like, it almost like has like a cove.
It does.
And will just.
There's two of them.
Harbor.
There's one at like around USC-ish. Around 32nd Street, and there's one at Vernon and Slauson.
That's the one I was thinking of. Yeah. Because it'll just harbor all the water right there. So I can't imagine what that's like right now.
It's going to be bad. It's going to be bad. And Mark, does this change how you drive home possibly tonight?
Well, I changed the drive here because the on-ramp to the 405 in North Hills, you're fording a river. I knew that the car would stall out if I took that way. But there were a number of other places on the way here as well. I left early, and I'm glad I did. You do not want to screw around in this stuff. I'm telling you, as a former Seattle resident, today was a bad one.
And it possibly, from what you're telling us, Mark, about tomorrow's precipitation could be worse. Is that correct?
No, actually, I think we're through the worst of it. And we should, as far as I understand from everything I've been reading and reporting, we should be in the clear by tomorrow evening.
Okay. I'll take good news wherever we can find it. When we come back, KFI's own Michael Monks will join us with a preview what he has going on this weekend, and it relates to the wildfires. We'll learn more about that in just a moment.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
And coming up this weekend, Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m. and Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m., KFI's own Michael Monks will be presenting his special on the weekend, the weekend wildfire special, and he'll give us an update on that right now. Michael Monks, good to talk to you.
Good evening, Mo.
I always wondered, when you're reporting the news, you get one perspective. You don't get a wide perspective. You're kind of narrow in just the facts and what is happening in the moment. But now that some time has passed, you gain a little bit of perspective. What do you think that you have learned looking back on the wildfires?
I'll tell you what was most interesting in putting this together so far. And I should note, just for disclosure, I talked to a couple of wildfire victims who work with us at KFI and at iHeart, one of them being your producer, Tawala Sharp, who had some trouble in the Altadena fire. And also David Howard from our sales department, who lost a house in the Palisades. And as I talked to both of them separately, by the way, and then put together this piece about their experiences, I learned the similarities, despite the fact that these fires happen 30 miles from one another in different types of neighborhoods. There was a sense of optimism on both sides that, hey, we've seen these types of forecasts before. Heck, we've had fires before, but this may not play out. And so there was that hope up until the very last moment that nothing was going to happen. And then after it happened, the similar emotions, not just of losing the homes, but both of these guys experienced the sensation of being physically lost in neighborhoods that they have known for decades because everything was gone. All of the recognizable historic landmarks were gone. And that really opened up a new perspective of the devastation that we've all seen. We've seen aerial footage. I've been there on the ground. I've seen it up close and personal. But to hear it from their mouths in that way, with that intensity, it really did open my eyes even bigger to the sense of loss that this entire region has experienced collectively.
I got to ask you, because you may interview someone on a daily basis, and even though they may be going through something painful, there is a degree of distance because you don't know them. You don't see them every day. You don't work with them. How was it going through this type of interview process with two people that you would see presumably daily and know them in a way that you wouldn't a typical interview subject?
The closer you are to somebody, the harder it is to hear the story. We report tragedies every day in the news, and it's terrible, and we have humanity, and we recognize that if it's some fatal crash that takes place on the freeway, that's sad, but that's also somebody's family member, right? I mean, somebody who's
right.
closer to that is a devastating experience that will live with them forever. So the closer you are to something, obviously, the more intense the feelings, but I was grateful to both David and Tawala for sharing their stories with us, because they both presented their story with a sense of vulnerability. They really opened up about the feelings that they experienced in the moment leading up to the fires, the moments during the fires, immediately after, and even right now. And it's just been terrible. And just to build upon the similarities that both are experiencing, that focus has shifted to the rebuild and the interactions with the governments, the reflection on the preparedness or the lack thereof that the governments had in addressing these fires as they were on the way and as they were happening. And it was just all very revealing that even though we tell the stories, we talk to the politicians, we talk to people on the ground, the people who are experiencing it, not just on January 7th, not just on January 8th, but right now, it's still very, very intense. The smoke is not gone from their lives.
If you're just tuning in, Michael Monks of KFI News Department is joining me on the line. He has a very important weekend wildfire special, which is coming up on Saturday from 7 to 9 p.m., and it will re-air on Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Michael, we often talk about how we find ourselves in a story, at what point we find ourselves in the story. Obviously, this is not the end of the particular story. As they say, it's the end of the beginning, and we know that this rebuild process that you talked about is going to be very long. In talking to Tawala and David Howard and anyone else in covering the fires, have you figured out whether this rebuild effort is going to plan or is it actually going to pot?
This is the hard part. The hard part now begins. The fires are out. Thank goodness. We have some challenges, obviously, tonight, maybe a little bit into tomorrow, and let's hope that it doesn't get too bad out there. These folks have been through enough. We know that, and we don't want anybody else thrown into the fray. But this is a long road. There are a lot of people who say they will rebuild, and there are other folks who are looking to rebuild their lives somewhere else. But this is a region that was already challenged. It was cash-strapped. It was suffering from a housing shortage and an expensive cost of living anyway. Part of this special explores that as well, the economic impact, a study that came out from UCLA. I'll talk to one of the researchers. This is not just a dollar figure on the damage that has been done, which is well into the billions of dollars, not just on the insurance claims folks are making, but money that you and I are going to have to spend because of this. If you have an insurance policy, it's likely to go up, this researcher will tell us. And we are also possibly going to see rents going up, the cost of housing going up even further. And can we spare that? So we are all going to feel the impact. And one other element that all of us will have felt, if we haven't felt it already, is what we lost in the fires. We may not have lost our home. We may not even know anybody who lived in Altadena or lived in the Palisades, but more than likely at some point we've been there, or goodness, we wanted to go there and see some attraction or some restaurant that we love that's now gone. So we talked to the LA Conservancy, a preservationist group here in Los Angeles, about the impact of the loss of some of these historic structures and venues that have been there so long and have meant so much to so many people. And if you didn't get the chance to go, you never will, because they're gone, and that's something you can't really rebuild.
He's Michael Monks. He has a very important weekend wildfire special. Do not miss it. It's here on KFI from 7 to 9 p.m. on Saturday, and it will be re-aired on Sunday from 2 to 4 p.m. Michael, I have not heard it yet. I am eagerly awaiting to tune in to listen to your treatment and also learn something, because I know we don't have perspective when we're reporting on these things. It's not till weeks and maybe months afterward, and you're going to help provide that.
Yeah, you get swept up in the moment a lot, but to have a moment to spend some time on this and to make sure that we as a community across LA remember what it was like in those early days and what it's like right now, it's just really important that we stay focused.
Thank you for what you do, Michael.
Thank you, Mo.
It's Later with Mo Kelly, KFI AM 640. We are live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
You're listening to Later with Mo Kelly on demand from KFI AM 640.
Later with Mo Kelly.
KFI AM 640. We're live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app. And I have a very complicated relationship with Denny's. That's the only way I can describe it. It's fond when I think of my time in my 20s, going to clubs, going to the Red Onion in Redondo Beach or Lakewood, and then we would come out and we would be very hungry. And usually the only place which was open that we could afford, because we were always broke. If we had any money, we probably spent it buying drinks for whatever would-be woman we were trying to get the phone number of. We didn't have a lot of money back then. So we would go to Denny's. And there was a time in which, I'm not proud to say it, we dined, we ditched, and it's been hanging over my head for the past 30 some odd years. And I've been saying that one day I was going to walk into that Denny's where I dined and ditched, and it's right across the way from Del Amo Mall in Torrance. You probably know where it is. It's on Hawthorne Boulevard at just on the backside of the mall, right next to the Marriott Hotel. Dined, ditched. Long story short, I've been guilty about it, and I've been saying next time I'm around in that area, I need to go in and just slap a good $20, $25 on the register and then just walk out, and then my conscience will be clear. And then Twala handed me the story today saying that Denny's is going to close 70 to 90 restaurants this year. I don't know if they're closing all these restaurants because of me and the one time that I dined and ditched. I don't know. I don't know if there's a correlation. I don't know if there's a causal relationship that because my $20 meant the end of these restaurants. I don't know. But it's possible. And I'm starting to feel very guilty, and I'm running out of time to make things right. Denny's announced back in October that they will be cutting 150 restaurants altogether by the end of this fiscal year. In that October report, Denny's said it planned to close 50 locations by the end of 2024 and the other 100 this year. The fourth quarter report, which was released yesterday, said 30 locations were closed in the last quarter, with 88 locations overall closed last year. I know it's complicated. Bottom line is a lot of Denny's are going to be closed, and I'm trying not to put that blame on myself and my $20. So Tawala said we need to hurry up and get that video of me dropping my $20 on the counter at the Denny's in Torrance before it's too late. It does not say which particular locations will be closed, but you can imagine there will be a number of them in Southern California. And there's one in Gardena that I don't go to often. Stephanie, you may know of this one. It's on Western, I believe. Yes, on Western at about 182nd.
The Denny's?
Yeah, the Denny's is right next to a Del Taco.
Oh, yeah.
That's the one. That's the one I actually went to a lot during the pandemic because it's about the only place you get some food. They had the drive-through where you could drive up and get food.
I was going to say the one that you did the $20 mishap. That was the first one I saw doing outdoor dining during the pandemic.
Oh, really? Yeah, because I don't think I even drove by that one.
Yeah. Because at the time I used to live right like in that area. So I remember like 6 or 7 months in, I was like, oh wow, they have outdoor dining. And I remember it was cold, but I'm like, that's how desperate people wanted to get out of the house.
Well, the Denny's in Gardena, they had the outdoor dining too, but they had the big tent.
Oh, okay.
It was basically a restaurant outside. I always got food to go. And there was always this internal battle of do I tip or not? It was the pandemic, so I usually tipped. But yeah, it was a Denny's that I really frequented a lot because there weren't a lot of places that you could get food whenever, especially during the pandemic. A lot of the restaurants I would go to, they had limited hours for obvious reasons. You didn't need all the employees. You didn't need to be open all the time. So that Denny's in Gardena is the one that I would use. I never went to the one in Hawthorne.
Right after Torrance, right past Torrance, right?
No. It's down in like El Segundo Boulevard and Hawthorne, thereabouts.
Okay.
If I'm not mistaken.
Okay. Because, the one I know that you mentioned all the time is one right next to Del Amo, like in front of it.
And Mark, is Denny's a thing? I should say, was it a thing when you were up in Washington?
Oh, yeah. Everybody loves Denny's.
Okay. I was just wondering.
And I'll admit that I was with a group. I think I was in high school. They tried to dine and dash and leave me with it, and I wasn't about to pick up the tab for the whole table, so I left as well, and I feel bad about it to this day. And I want you to know, Mo, that there is no expiation for this sin. The people, the people that we screwed over back at the time, they're probably retired or dead now.
That's true.
There's no way to make up for what we did.
I know, so we have to pay it forward somehow.
Oh, pay it forward.
That's the only thing we can do. I mean, yeah, because I'm quite sure, I sure hope the woman who was working as a waitress back in 1993, hopefully she owns the restaurant by now.
Either that or she had to make it up out of her own pocket.
No, she did, didn't I? She did.
She got fired.
That's where the guilt comes in because I know that she was still responsible for the meal.
Now, I would be impressed if you found a way to track down whoever was working that night, whose life you may have inadvertently destroyed.
I don't know if it's possible because it was kind of common that people would dine. You call it dine and dash. I call it dine and ditch. They would do that to that particular location because of the club going crowd. So there's no way to know. I'm probably one of 452.
That does not lessen your guilt.
No, it doesn't lessen my guilt. I'm saying to reverse engineer who was working there when in that general area.
There's probably no way to do it. You'd have to hire an expensive private detective, like somebody who works for a legal office, an actual investigator with access to LexisNexis and all that kind of stuff.
No, this is what I would do. I would actually go to my bank because I've been with the same bank for a long time and see if they could go to my expenditures within that, I'll say 2-year period. I don't know if they would still even hold on to them that long, but it's got to exist somewhere. And then I would try to figure it out from there.
It'd take some doing, and I'm not sure you want to see the result because the person may have become an addict and homeless just because of that one thing that you did that night.
Yeah, may have ended up on Figueroa outside the Vagabond Hotel.
Vagabond.
That's a callback. That's a callback.
Maybe we could do like a live.
He just skipped over the rip shot.
He doesn't care.
No, he doesn't care. He doesn't care. I'm working hard here. I don't need it now. No, it's an afterthought. It's like buying me a gift for Valentine's Day on the 17th.
It means absolutely nothing to him.
No, I've thought about could I somehow figure out where I was, when it happened. And I settled on I'll just have to drop the money there and just have them look at me like I'm weird. And some employee will just say, sweet, extra tip for me. That's not my problem. It's almost like when you're tithing at church, you can't worry about where the money goes. You can't worry about whether the minister is going to use it for his strippers or his hookers. You can't worry about that. It's about you being a cheerful giver. It's about what you do.
Oh, okay. So you think that you can just buy your way out of this, wash your hands of it like it's a papal indulgence that you paid for?
No.
You're afraid to face the possibility that you might have turned a woman out onto the streets.
Turned her out?
Turned her out.
I was the tipping point. I was the straw that got the camel's back blown out.
That's right. Hooker, please.
Thank you very much. Hooker, please. I like that.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live.